All right, hey everyone. You're listening to High on the Trail. This is going to be a podcast about hiking, um, the Pacific Crest Trail, I guess most specifically, but we might cover other hikes and talk about things like the Appalachian Trail. My name is Sing Song, also known as Jerry, and I have today with me my hiking buddy Flash.
How's it going? My name's Flash.
Yep,
My real name is Benjamin.
yep. So you can call us, the ice cream team.
Ben and Jerry's.
So I guess we'll just start. We jotted down some ideas and some questions to ask each other, just in case we got to fall back on it. So uh, I guess first is we'll ask some of the most common questions to start off with, and kind of see where that goes from here. The first question I guess I have. It's a common question that pretty much everyone asks about hiking the PCT is why did you do it? Why did you do it? Why did you hike the PCT?
Yeah, I think it, it's such a common question that doesn't really have a complicated answer. I just thought it was a good idea. When people ask me, why did you hike the trail? And I say, why not? Like,
Yeah.
that's honestly the answer. Um, I have always been a person that really enjoyed the outdoors. I've
Mm-hmm.
always liked hiking. And then when I got into backpacking, I learned about the PCT and I thought, wow, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are like, maybe they want to have some uh, special, uh, I guess, experience, a spiritual experience, a self discovery experience. And that's why they're out there
Yeah.
doing it. Maybe they had a lot of trouble in their past life. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
lost someone. They want to find answers. And I think part of that was the reason for hiking the trail for me. But I think the main reason was just it sounded like a good idea.
Yeah, it does sound like there's always something in the back of your head. Like for me, I was kind of a little bit depressed and not sure what to do in life, and guess what? I still don't know what to do
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
in life. I still don't know what. Like the PCT really didn't solve all my issues. It felt like it did solve some problems though, and like as in terms of like motivation and just like getting up and doing that every day,
Yeah,
getting up to walk a marathon every day. It's something that like I guess most people don't think about, but doing it, um, it's something too. It was something I wanted to do, but there's all other reasons too. Like even sometimes one that was big distant reason that like I kind of thought about was like, well, what if all this burns up one day and it's all gone? Like,
yeah,
and after the past 2 years, or yeah, 2 years since we've been done, like there's been crazy fires in California. Like, and that was something I thought about was like not necessarily the fires, but just like the environment degrading at some point. It's like, well, got to enjoy it while it lasts, right?
yeah.
So
That's true.
yeah, so that's I guess why I do it.
Yeah, I think later we'll touch on more about our personal experiences on the trail and how that changed
Hmm.
us in later life.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely. So before before starting the trail, like how prepared were you for this backpacking trip?
uh, in terms of prior experience, let's just say backpacking. I think I've only been on maybe like 6 backpacking trips, maybe 7, with a friend, and I think the most was 3 nights that it was out. Um, I that was basically it, for in terms of backpacking. But I don't think that anyone needs to be a proficient backpacker to to hike the PCT. I don't even know what a proficient backpacker even is. It's
Yeah,
someone that walks.
yeah,
Like that's all backpacking is walks with a little bit
yeah.
of more, maybe a little bit heavier backpack that you normally would have
Hmm.
on. So the idea of being prepared really comes from did you do your research on getting the correct gear and honestly the most lightweight for the purposes that you want them to
Yeah.
be. Um, and in that terms, yeah, I did a lot of research on my gear and
Hmm.
read a lot about the gear and then bought the gear that I had and tested it out at least a couple of times before I went on the trail.
Yeah.
And for the most part, everything worked out.
Everything worked out. Yeah.
Things and things that maybe don't work out, you'll figure it out pretty quickly on the trail, and there's
Yeah.
always a time to fix what you might have messed up on.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't, for myself, I didn't really, I had no backpacking experience doing the PCT.
You've never backpacked before.
No, not before the PCT. There was no backpacking experience at all. Like, went camping and stuff with friends, went out in the woods, did that stuff. Been hiking plenty of times, but never backpacking. And that's where you combine the two, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for myself, no, there was never really any prior experience. And it's kind of like you said, I don't feel like you quite need it as long as you can research everything. And one thing I noticed too is like even when you research things or plan things, once you get out on the trail, all that stuff can change pretty quickly. Like the idea of being like, oh yeah, this is my set meal plan for the day. I'm gonna eat this, this, and this, and this. But then you get out there and you're like, I'm just hungry and I'm gonna eat it all. Like,
I
yeah.
honestly think it is great to do honestly almost as little as planning as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say plan your gear well.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
Other than that, doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's one picture I saw on Reddit, I believe, once of these guys that were prepping for the PCT, and they bought all their food, all of it.
Yeah.
Like $1,000 worth of food. Like I saw a garage full of food, and I'm like, and that was this. I think that was the same year I was hiking it too, and I was like, man, that's a lot of food. And then like I get out there and you get these mail drops, and sometimes you're like, man, this isn't what I wanted to eat today.
I wouldn't call myself a picky eater, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to eat tomorrow in real life. And how would you know prior to doing a through hike what you are going to eat in a month?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense to
Yeah.
me. And I mean, the good thing is that the PCT is, every few days you get to a grocery store and you can buy yourself some food.
Yeah.
And that is honestly the best idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's more difficult to get food,
Mm-hmm.
then you can make yourself a box on the trail. Spend an extra few hours in town planning it out, maybe an extra day, and send yourself some boxes. Like, you don't have to do it before the trail.
Yeah.
I remember sending myself a couple boxes in California, a couple boxes in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
and in Washington also.
Yeah.
It was not hard to do on the trail.
Yeah. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
And getting the boxes too, when you get I remember I was just thinking of one when I got this like protein powder, but it was like for bulking. So
Yeah.
it's like 1,000 calories for one serving.
Was that the that stuff that tasted like pancake batter?
Yeah, basically pancake batter with sugar.
Yeah.
And, I got it because I was like, you need calories and it's got protein and all that stuff in it. But then I think I packed like 3 or 4 bags for just about every meal for a few meal drops, and then I would drink it, like I just shake it up with water and drink it. But like the worst part about it was it's not eating it. Like you don't really get sick of eating it. You're just like, I'm just going to put it down. But you taste the protein powder the entire day.
Yeah.
For like days.
Yeah.
It's just stuck in your mouth, and like no matter how hard you brush your teeth, it's just still there.
It's one of those things that sounded like a good idea before the
Yeah.
trail, but ended up being a terrible idea on the trail. Exactly. The planning part.
Yeah. I thought, oh, this is gonna be good protein powder. So I guess if you're gonna get protein powder, look into it, and see what ones taste good, because there's ones that taste good and there's ones that just do not. Anyway, so aside from the gear and experience and all that stuff, let's talk about the scenery or the challenges or whatever along the trail. And let's divide up California into 3 parts, with the desert, the Sierra, and then like Northern California, I guess, be
The classic way of dividing the trail up.
classic way of dividing up California, because it is like 3 different major sections.
Yeah.
What do you what'd you think of all of them, and what were your experiences or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Northern California. I'm from Sacramento, and I am familiar with the Sierras and some of Northern California and stuff, but I'd honestly never been down to Southern California, never spent too much time in the desert, so I didn't really know what to expect, while hiking. I ended up really enjoying the desert.
Yep.
And it was honestly a magical place. It was beautiful out there. I'm not really sure what to say other than that it was really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, a lot of people would say that the desert is too hot, too dry, not enough cool things to see, generally difficult, and that all of that in combination makes it for a bad experience. However, for myself, I thought that temperature was pretty much just right for the most part. Never too hot, sometimes very cold. Water, you get water, you have just enough water, to get by. If you didn't have, it's just like Ed Abbey would say, it's like, if you had more water in this place, it wouldn't be the place that it would be. The desert doesn't have a lot of water, and that's what makes it a special place.
No, I think the misconceptions about the desert, like I was kind of blown away because it was probably the first 2 weeks it was just gloomy, like all morning, all the way up until about 11 a.m. So like hiking for the first few hours of the day sometimes would be really cold, and then it would warm up, it'd get hot, and when it did get hot, I mean, for me, I'm not used to the heat, so I had a quite a hard time in the desert. But I think part of it too was what you're wearing, what you're dressed with. Like obviously putting on sunscreen is way better than wearing like a long sleeve shirt, because I feel like you're cooking in a long sleeve shirt the whole day, and that's what happened with me a lot. I'd overheat, felt like I was overheating. I also was carrying an umbrella, which I don't know if you need one out there or not, but
I don't think you do. I don't also don't think it's a bad idea to bring one either.
It's just a pain trying to figure, like, because I didn't spend the time figuring out how to hook it up to like my backpack, or to have it in a way that, because I still had trekking poles, so I'd like use one trekking pole and then hold the umbrella.
Yeah, if you're gonna get an umbrella, you might want to look into a way to attach it to your backpack so you don't have to hold it all day, because I could tell you that's not going to be fun. I should preface by saying that we both started the hike. I think you started on April 28th, and I started on April 29th. And so it wasn't like we started early in the season, just a normal time. And I'd say for the first 2 weeks, generally, we had really mild weather. I don't think it got above even 85 those first 2 weeks. It rained really good on us for a few days there.
Once we got out of what was that?
I don't know.
Mile 100. What was it? 101.
Mount Laguna. Right after Mount Laguna.
Is that when it rained?
That's
really bad?
yeah. Because that's when I started hiking with you. Right after Mount Laguna. Not Mount Laguna. What's the place that's at mile 100?
That's what I'm trying to have the hardest time.
See, people who actually have done their planning, they'll be listening to this. They're like, what are you talking about? You don't know the name of that town?
Hold on, let me look it up real quick.
It's at like mile 100, and then right after that we got rained on really good.
I will keep looking at it.
Right after Eagle Rock.
Is right after Eagle Rock. Warner Springs, exactly.
Yeah, of course, Warner Springs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right after Warner Springs was when we got rained on really, really good.
Yeah, that was freezing, like
really cold rain.
Really cold, freezing, and then get up there into the mountains up there.
Like hypothermic rain.
Yeah, and then there's like, whose house was that? Some trail guy's house.
Yeah,
that was
right off the road. That was a weird experience. They had tacos there, though. Taco salad.
The taco salad was good, but it was cold, but it was still good. Beer cans everywhere.
Yeah.
It was the one thing I would say about the desert that I found something I really enjoyed was like the trail culture along the desert was probably the most developed. In some ways or some aspects, like there's a lot of trail angels, a lot of help. Like even some of the areas where there are longer water carries, like there's that one stretch
right before Warner, it's Warner Pass. I know it's Warner Springs, but Warner Pass is the one right before, or right after Tehachapi.
Right after Tehachapi, right before you're about to go into Sierra.
It's like Bee Spring Road or something weird. I forget that name. But there was this one road that it was like that was 30 miles past. It was this Langer Spring or something like that, right? And then you have like 42 miles without any natural water.
Yeah.
And you got to this road. And there was actually like a cache there, just like every other cache that you would, find. I think that, the trail culture in the southern part of the trail was much more developed. And I think that just has to do with how many people hike in the beginning, and then how many people quit later. So you don't have as much people, obviously, through Northern California as you'd have through the desert. So, yeah, I agree. There's a lot more people out there, so it's easier to find friends to hike with. And a lot easier to find people that are going your pace because there's so many people out there.
Yeah. Desert hiking was cool. I think one thing too, desert hiking, that something that I didn't think I would like to do, because when I tried cowboy camping for the first time, it was terrifying. Like,
Yeah.
I was all by myself. Well, not all by myself. There's another guy that was camping about the same area I was at, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it looks cool. You're gonna cowboy camp." And so like he sets up his mat and his bag, and I see him lay down, and he's probably like 30 feet away from me, and I'm laying down, and like it's just, you hear every noise and everything. And this was like my second or third night on the PCT to try and give cowboy camping a try, and I saw like some kind of animal. It was probably like could have been like a coyote or a fox or something. Like that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Looked like a small dog walking around. I was like, all right, I'm gonna set up my tent now. And so I set that up. But later on, I developed the courage and the confidence to cowboy camp. But it was almost always with people. I don't think I did it once cowboy camped alone, but I really liked that.
I had never cowboy camped before the PCT, and I started doing it pretty early on, honestly, because my tent was so annoying to set up. I had a non-freestanding tent, and the desert is pretty dry out there, so it's really hard to get stakes into the ground. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have good tension on your tent with the non-freestanding tent, you're gonna have a bad time. So honestly, a lot of times I'd be so lazy, I would just cowboy camp, and I ended up enjoying it a lot. It does take a little bit to get used to, but I ended up really enjoying cowboy camping. But you could do that throughout most of the trail, really. But it was generally good weather in the desert. The desert is honestly just a beautiful place. You think about like we're not hiking through a flat area. The desert is not a flat area. You have mountains you have to go over all of the time, and so if you're used to, let's say, hiking on the East Coast, it's honestly almost a lot like hiking on the East Coast, except for you don't have the trees. So it's like you have all of the mountains and everything. You have all of the great views, but no trees. That's why you have the great views. I think it's just a really cool place. When you do have water, it's really cool. You have awesome. If you go in the springtime, you have a lot of awesome flowers you go across all the time. Yep. It's just not a dry, desolate place as what most people would imagine the desert to be. It's a really cool place.
It really feels like the place too where you see the most animals.
Yeah, definitely. Again, because you don't have a lot of cover.
Yeah, I saw so many flyby lizards and a handful of rattlesnakes, which are not scary, like, at all.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, I think I counted 13 rattlesnakes in the desert.
Yeah,
I think
handful. Yeah, and they keep to themselves, and they let you know. They're like, hey, stay back. I don't know if I saw anything else besides really snakes and lizards.
I mean, I probably saw some deer in the desert, I'd imagine. There's definitely no bears. Didn't see no mountain lions. Yeah. So, there's coyotes out there, but I don't think I've seen any. So
no, I remember in Sierra, I saw a coyote just walk right past me, like it was walking.
Really?
Yeah, it was like I was walking northbound on the trail, and then the coyote seriously just walked probably within 10 feet of me, going southbound, and just looked at me and just kept going. And I'm like, dude.
Hey there.
just sauntered on. But yeah, let's. I guess we can talk about the Sierra now.
Yeah.
What kind of things, I guess, with the Sierra would you say are either highlights, challenges, difficulties, fun times, hard times?
The Sierras, that's a huge, huge difference from the desert. You go into a place that has trees finally, a lot more water. Lot more water, especially when you go, in June when it's like high snow melt, water everywhere. High elevation, so it's more difficult. It's really a huge change. I thought the Sierras were going to be like the highlight of the PCT, and in a lot of ways it was, but in a lot of ways it was like honestly the first time I think I was really, really challenged. The Sierras are really, honestly difficult because actually from what I remember the Sierras is you basically hike half the day up and then you hike half the day down.
Yeah. Yeah,
because you
exactly.
go over a pass basically every day,
Yeah.
maybe two in a
Mhm.
day, but you basically are hiking up for a long time and then hiking down for a long time. So that can get really, really difficult,
It does.
because on your body, you don't have that change. It wasn't a beautiful place though,
Yeah.
um, and it was amazing.
Well, I
But
think for me, one thing that stood out in the Sierras was the elevation and getting that like altitude sickness, like really starting to get it, especially the first couple days in. Like I'm used to doing all the hiking that we had in the desert and going up. I mean, we're probably doing about the same amount of elevation and de-elevation in a day, but
yeah,
a little differently. It's like you
yeah,
said,
yeah,
it's just up and
up
down.
and
Whereas in
yeah,
the desert, it could be up and down and up and down.
yeah.
Um, but like having that elevation sickness kind of get to me for the first
The first few
2 to 3
days,
days.
yeah, the first few
Yeah.
days you're gonna feel a little bit different. You're still in shape from the desert, but you basically go from Kennedy Meadows and then you literally hike up almost the whole way uphill for 20 miles
Yeah.
out of Kennedy Meadows, and you finally get to an elevation of like 11,000 feet, and then you start going back down again, and then you just keep on going up and down.
Yeah.
I don't think the trail drops below 8,000 feet for like over 300 miles once you hit the Sierras, something like that. So it's a completely different experience in the desert. I never, even though I grew up in California, I never been through. I don't think I don't have never stepped on foot on the PCT in the Sierras, excluding Tahoe if you want to count that. So yeah, it was a good experience. Lots of snow though, especially if you go early. Every pass is going to be covered in snow. You don't. I mean,
I totally forgot about the snow.
the snow. Yeah, going to gear and stuff. Both me and you had an ice axe, and I
Mhm.
think both me and you had micro spikes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I personally think that both are a good idea to have.
Yeah.
You could get away with not having either. You could also die.
Yeah.
That's not a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the thing that was crazy is we both came prepared for the Sierra, but like pretty much we didn't really need it that year. Like
No.
so at least at that time, if we would have been probably a week or two early, it would be much different. But like, yeah, when you said the snow, I was like, oh yeah, I remember walking over snow. But there was only one spot, and that was like by the John Muir, where it was like covered. John Muir Hut.
No, there was a lot more. I mean, like, okay, yeah, when we went over, I think maybe that was Muir Pass. I'm not really sure. There's the longest pass. I think it was Muir Pass that I think we hiked over snow for 8 to 10 miles on snow.
That is nothing.
But nothing difficult.
Yeah.
But there were portions that were difficult. For example, that little chute that everyone talks about, right before going northbound. It's right before you get on top of Forester Pass. And honestly, that chute, even when we went over it, I'd be scared if I didn't have my ice axe.
Yeah.
You didn't need it necessarily, but I felt a lot more comfortable with it.
It's just a good insurance policy. Really.
It really is.
Yeah.
But micro spikes I think are even more important than the ice axe because it just gives you traction and helps you not slip.
Yeah.
But I would still take pretty much any year. I would still take the spikes and the ice axe. It's just a good insurance policy. You're thinking if you're really that concerned about weight, I mean, that's your life you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of people like that are listening to this, even our friends that hiked with us, would say like you guys are overreacting. I like to be on the safe side. That's just me.
Better play it safe than sorry.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the water in the Sierras, that's pretty much when I didn't filter. Like
Yeah.
I didn't filter any water in the Sierras, and then I didn't carry like any water in the Sierras.
Yeah, that's the great thing about hiking through the Sierras is that you don't have to do no more water carries. Like I think the most I had ever carried was 2 liters, and that was because I was going to go dry camp, which was even rare in the Sierras. Yeah. When you can see the snow melting right in front of you, like there's a big sheet of snow above you with nothing but clean rocks, and it's melting into a little like stream that you can gather, and it's ice cold. I mean, you don't have to filter that.
Yeah.
I think it's just a waste of time.
Yeah. I think pretty much the entire Sierra I didn't filter, and then I
Pretty much after see, like even in the desert, most of the time you don't have to filter because you'd be getting it from springs. But I didn't really know that going into it,
same.
But then hiking in the Sierra and then never filtering my water, I filtered maybe a dozen times after the Sierras, and that was it.
Yeah.
Because most water I figured was clean, and I don't think I ever got sick. Actually, no, I know I never got sick from not filtering because I never got sick after Kennedy Meadows.
Yeah.
And that was when I was filtering. So
what happened at Kennedy Meadows? How'd you get sick? Or how'd you think you got sick?
Yeah. So Kennedy Meadows is a very, very, very popular place. Everyone goes there and hangs out for a few days before they go into the Sierras. And I think it's just a natural breeding ground for bad germs.
Bad germs and bacteria.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I contracted the neurovirus.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of being in close quarters with a lot of people. And if basically neurovirus, it happens if people are not very clean, don't wash their hands, and it gets on the tables and shit, and you touch the table and eat food, you could get sick. So I'm pretty sure I got the neurovirus. I was really, really sick. Everything coming out of every hole.
Yeah. I remember reading one thing prior to getting on the PCT was to always have like a nice little alcohol hand sanitizer and just shooting your hands pretty much before you're going to eat, because like you get a little scrapes here when you're wiping your butt or something, and probably get on your fingers and get into your mouth. And
even if you had hand sanitizer though, sometimes I think it's impossible to stop.
Well, it was just crazy how many people were at Kennedy Meadows when we stopped there. It felt like there was probably about 50 plus
easily
people
that were just stopped there. Yeah,
just all hikers just waiting to go in. And you hear all the rumors too there about like, oh, the snow, oh my god. I fell for it.
And so I got sick. I got sick in Kennedy Meadows, and I was there for 3 days. I think I took 3 zeros there because of how sick I was. I learned like a month after that the food place that was attached to the store there got shut down for unhealth or for not having for not passing safety codes. I don't know what they were doing wrong, but it's possible I got sick because of that. It was just like I didn't hear of too many other people getting sick personally, but I had heard stories of other people getting sick at Kennedy Meadows, and it could have been because of that. Could have been. I honestly just think it's because there's just too many people at Kennedy Meadows hanging around.
A lot of people there. There's a lot of people at Kennedy Meadows.
And I was filtering my water before Kennedy Meadows, so I don't think it was me not filtering the water. And then after that, I never got sick on the trail. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Good. So what'd you think of Northern California?
Yeah, Northern California was interesting. I think a lot of times it was hotter than the desert.
Oh yeah, there was a 100-degree day out there, and like, what's it, not Chester, but right before Mount Shasta. I remember that.
Yeah.
Like 104.
Yeah. I mean, really, really, really hot, and that wasn't unexpected because I'm from Northern California, so in Sacramento, it routinely gets above 100 degrees every single summer, all the time. So, wasn't surprising to me. I thought it would be a little bit cooler since we're up in the mountains, but even in Northern California, you're at low elevation sometimes, so it gets really hot. And a lot of people say that Northern California is like the worst section. I'll just say I haven't said it yet, but I'll just say that I don't think there is a worst section on the PCT. I think I had good times in every single section.
Yeah, same.
Northern California had its own jewels. Like I really, really enjoyed going through the Marble Mountains, and like you could see the Trinity Alps, and you go through like Trinity Alp Wilderness, but you're not really in Trinity Alps.
Yeah.
But you like that was just a really great place. And then also seeing like Burning Falls was amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
Burning Falls is, for people who don't know, Burning Falls is basically like the water comes out of the ground from a spring half a mile before Burning Falls, basically. And it's a huge river that comes out of the ground, and it's like a spring, and then it goes half a mile and then flows over these rocks, basically, and that's Burning Falls. But it's the coolest thing because it's not like some crazy river or whatever that's been going on for a long time. It's just a river that comes out of the ground, and boom, you got a huge waterfall. So anybody that's looking at pictures of Burning Falls, and that is a spring that literally just started right above that. And so seeing something like that, those natural features, really cool.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then like Shasta is a beautiful mountain, great 14er that's up in Northern California. And seeing that was really cool. You see Mount Shasta. If you're hiking 20 miles a day, you'll see Mount Shasta for 3 weeks.
Yeah, that was that was something that was mind blowing. I think you get maybe just a little bit past Ashland, and then that's when it starts to.
That's when you don't see it anymore. Yeah, it's right before Crater Lake. Yeah, is when you stop seeing it. But you see it pretty much right after, like a few days after Tahoe. If you're keeping your eyes out, you actually start seeing the Shasta then, and you won't stop seeing it until you get past the border. But yeah, Northern California was sometimes hot, sometimes not, sometimes beautiful, sometimes not. But that's every single portion of the trail. Mm-hmm. Honestly, had a really good time in Northern California, seeing a lot of places that I've always wanted to see. Going through places that I had been before. I've been to like Castle Crags area. Yeah. I've been to like McCloud River, been around the Shasta area quite a bit, but never hiked through a bunch of that stuff. So it was just really cool for me as a Californian to go through every single portion of California. I thought it was awesome walking through my home state. So
California was just crazy because it's like 3 months, and then you get to like Oregon, and it's like a couple weeks.
Yeah,
like 3 weeks maybe.
Yeah, you hike through California for 3 months, and then you hike through Oregon in 3 weeks, and that's at a nice, decent pace. That's not going super fast or super slow. It's just like 20 miles a day. You get through it in 3 weeks, so it's like crazy to go through. Yeah, to go through that.
Yeah, California was pretty crazy as in terms of like mentally, distance. I guess, in some ways, because I remember getting to Chester, which is right about the halfway point.
Yeah,
and I think I was probably like 80 or 90 days all the way by the time I got to Chester, and then I'm just like, God, now I have to go, like, I'm halfway. How am I going to make it? Am I going to be 80 or 90 days more, to finish the trail? Because that's what I thought for a second. Like, there was doubt in my head, but
it's funny is for any Europeans out there, I remember Jig Salmon, good old friend from the UK, and he said that the distance that you had to walk in California was the same distance as if you walked from London to Iraq. So it was really funny because when he was telling us, because he only did the California portion of the trail, and I remember him telling me that, and we're like, wow, that's crazy to think about it. But for any Europeans, you're basically hiking across Europe, so it's a really, really, really long distance. If you drive across California, that's nothing. If you walk across it, it's completely different because all the twists and turns and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think the whole state is like.
So it's more than half. Well, it's obviously more than halfway. So the whole state, I think, is 1,500.
1,500 miles. So
I think it's around that. Maybe a little bit more.
A little more, because I know 2000s in Oregon, 2,000-mile mark.
I think both the Oregon and Washington section are close to 1,000 miles. So if you did that, then it would be 1,600 miles approximately for California.
Driving it, I think California is only like 850 miles if you drove it from the top all the way down to San Diego.
Yeah.
Which is, I remember looking at that on the maps when I went down.
I know this is like, we're getting a little off topic, but just to say, hiking the PCT is a cross-country hike, although you are doing it from north to south or south to north.
Yeah.
However, if you took that distance to 2650, you can drive from LA to Savannah, Georgia, I believe. Maybe you're like off by like 100 miles, but it's basically you'd be basically driving across the whole country if you did the same distance in a car.
Yeah.
It is a long hike.
Yeah, it's long, it's far, but it's crazy how much when you're out there and you're going by foot, how you really get to soak in everything. It's kind of like, you said we'd look at Shasta 3 weeks basically out there on the trail. But when you're driving through California, you'll see Shasta, and you see it once when you're in Oregon, and then you cross into California, and then you're done. But you only see it for maybe like 4 hours in a car if you're taking a road trip, right? Whereas
What, Shasta?
Shasta, yeah,
You don't even see it for 4 hours. You'd see it. You'd
2
see it
hours?
from yeah. You probably see it for less than that. You
Yeah.
basically drive past it. Once you get up to Grants Pass, you don't see it anymore. In Oregon, if you're driving north,
Oh,
and
okay.
you only start seeing it at like Mount Shasta City, so that's like an hour. That's like an hour's drive, maybe a little bit more. But
See it for 1 hour versus see it for 3 weeks, and then you hitchhike, and then you're like, oh my god, we're moving so fast.
yeah,
Once you get in the car. Um, anyway, what'd you think of how about Oregon? What was your thoughts? You got any thoughts on Oregon?
yeah. Oregon generally is. I remember it being very, very, very dry. I thought I was done with water carries when I left the desert, and that was untrue.
Yeah.
Problem with Oregon is that it's a lot of volcanic rock, so water just goes right through it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really have a lot of streams. I'd say the average, for some reason, I remember almost every single day there was like a 17-mile water carry. It was like almost always 17 miles.
Yeah.
So it's not like a ton, but it is a lot. And there are days, I think, in Oregon that are over 20 miles without water. So it is a dry state. And generally, you also I think the general perception of Oregon, if you haven't hiked before, is Oregon is a wet state. It's in the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hiking through Oregon on the PCT in the summertime, it's going to be dry. Like, you might get some rain, most likely not. Not until you get into the Columbia River Gorge,
Mhm.
which is now you're into Washington.
Yeah, actually, you're actually in a good point. When you get up there, it doesn't feel like you're really in the Pacific Northwest till you get to the Columbia River Gorge, for me at least.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah,
Because the plants change completely coming down that hill,
Yeah.
Then you get all the ferns, and you get all the moss, and you get all
And
that stuff.
that's how much rain you get. You get a
Yeah.
lot more rain where the Columbia River is, but before that, you don't. It's really pretty dry.
Yeah, it's pretty dry. The weather was never too hot either. That was something.
Wasn't ever
nice.
too hot, and if it was, you're almost always covered by trees.
Yeah, covered by trees. Lots of lakes to swim in, which was nice.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, I had generally a good time in Oregon. There was a lot of beautiful spots. Obviously, Crater Lake was nice. PCT, if you go on the PCT, everyone knows, if you've done any research, that you don't ever even see Crater Lake if you stay on the PCT. But if you
Yeah.
do the alternate, then you do. And why wouldn't you do the alternate? If you're a true thru hiker, you
Yeah.
could stay on the trail, all right? I don't care.
Yeah, well, the thing is that alternate, that was the only portion of the PCT I slack packed.
Yeah.
For it's like a mile and a half.
I
or
remember
whatever.
judging you pretty harshly on that.
Yeah, I still feel bad about it. Like in some ways, deep down inside, because I
Yeah.
had it. I have a continuous footpath. Not all PCT miles. Some of it's roadwalks and such. Especially we could talk about that. We totally forgot about all the roadwalks.
Yeah.
But I had a continuous footpath, and then you were already a little ahead, and there was a guy giving a ride up to the Crater Lake Lodge or whatever.
Yeah.
And you were already up there, and you came down and saw me at the bottom. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I think I was like half a day ahead of you, so I decided that what I was going to do was hike up to Crater Lake and then hitch back down to the campground.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So then I think I got a ride with the guy going up to the top, but that's because I already hiked it.
Yeah, you
the
got
day
a ride
before.
back, and I was like, oh yeah, can you just take my my pack, and I'll just hoof it up, and I
Yeah.
pretty much ran most of that section.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, again, you have continuous footsteps because you did do that portion, but he took the bag, and I think I looked over your bag until you got up to the top.
Yeah, and it was only like it really was
4 miles.
4 miles. Was it 4 miles?
4 miles, I think, maybe 3.
Because it only took about an hour.
Yeah,
I think.
it wasn't long at all.
Yeah, and slack packing, that was the first time, the only section I slack packed, and then like after I've been done, I still think about that every once in a while.
I told you, I said, dude, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you sure? And you were pretty adamant on that.
Yeah, well, because I wanted to just
You want to take it easy that day.
just take it easy, and I took it easy, and I had no miles ever skipped on the PCT, did every mile, but just 4 miles slack packed,
Excluding the road walks.
excluding the road walks.
Which is, I think we got pretty lucky on that because for the past 2 years, it seems like there was a lot of fires. and most people have to skip sections. Otherwise, they do like some outrageous road walks on roads that are probably pretty dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So we got lucky in that we had no active fires while we were on the trail, none where we were. And the only time we ever had to do a road walk was because of a fire that happened in the previous year. Mm-hmm. And so we did do road walk into Idlewild.
Yeah, that one wasn't too bad.
No, it's like 20 miles or something like that.
That last,
I mean, not even that.
The last section, or I don't know if it's even the last section, but there's about 4 miles that were on a really narrow road, which was kind of crappy,
kind of sucky. But yeah, we did the road walk into Idlewild. We did the Yucca. Yeah, so
Yucca Valley was bad.
That was bad. When we went through in 2016, there was a fire years prior in the San Gorgonio Mountains. Yeah, and that had closed that portion of the trail right after the Whitewater Preserve for a long time, and so you could only legally get like a hitch basically around, or a taxi or a bus or whatever. And we had decided that we were just gonna hike a road walk that we had found on the internet that described a potential path, and so it was it was basically a road walk from Whitewater Preserve up to Big Bear, California. And I think overall, the road walk was approximately, I think it was 45 miles. I think it was a road walk of 45 miles.
And there was two of the crappiest sections was getting into like the Yucca Valley, into the city there.
Yeah, because we walked on a highway for like 10 miles in the blazing hot sun.
Yeah, and
that sucked.
Dude, that sucked, but I remember looking up, how you walk up that hill and you see that hill where all the cars are coming down from Yucca Valley or whatever. And it felt like it dragged on forever.
Like I said, it was like 10 miles of you walking up this like very, very minor gradual hill, and you're like basically you felt like helpless almost. It was weird. It felt really, really weird.
Yeah, cars flying by at like 50 miles an hour, and you're on the side of the road.
But then after we got off the road and started hiking up into Indian Valley, I think it was called. That's where they do all the movie sets and stuff for the westerns. It started getting nice, but then the next day we had just some great trail magic. There was like this ranger that took us into his house. Me, you, and like 2 or 3 other hikers.
Shotgun was there, and then
Shotgun was there.
Yeah, Shotgun was there.
Oh wow,
that was like, because I remember meeting. I think I met Shotgun. I remember seeing Shotgun at Idlewild.
Okay.
But then I remember I didn't really meet him though at that, was it the Whitewater Preserve?
Yeah.
You said? Yeah, I don't remember talking to him or anything there very much. And I think it was past Big Bear. He was hiking with some other hiker for a while, and then I guess he just kept going ahead
But we like Shotgun a lot. We miss him.
Yeah.
Good old German friend. But we had to do this crazy road walk. That night though, we started hiking after we got that good trail magic and spent the night at that ranger's house. I remember the next day was a Saturday, and it was on these like dirt roads up in the mountains there, and everyone decided that they were going to go jeeping that day, which jeeping back in Southern California means getting your like stupid like $50,000 like 2-wheel drive like Jeep out, and you're driving on dirt roads. Like that's their idea of fun and getting out, and we were really pissed about that.
Yeah, I mean it just sucks because it's like you're on the road, and when you're walking on such like that small I can't get the words right, a narrow dirt road, there we go, and it's probably like 12 feet wide possibly at most, and then it's one way for the most part, and just these Jeeps coming driving past you every couple of minutes.
Blowing freaking exhaust and their dust all up in your face. And it just was annoying to me because I was like, I understand this is a road, but like, how is this even fun for you guys? Like, you're just driving around. I remember seeing like the same stupid black Jeep and that stupid couple that like drove by. Like, I don't remember.
Yeah, I saw.
You remember? Yeah, they drove by like us like 5 times in like 3 hours, and every time I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, why don't you guys
Yeah.
why don't you guys go on a hike for this time instead of like wasting a tank of gas driving around in a circle all day, like on a dirt road?
That's it, yeah.
And then it was so hot that day, so they had the windows up too, so you're like boxed in. You're not even smelling the fresh air or anything. You're just boxed in your stupid Jeep driving around in circles. Like,
Driving up and down, and it wasn't even like
I remember thinking like, how did their life come to this? I remember it. Anyway, it was a bad day, I think, for both.
Yeah,
both
I
of
was
us,
pretty
but-
angry by the end of it, writing horrible things in the sand, like "F this road." you
Oh
know?
yeah, I remember you writing that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, but anyway, we did that road walk. Did we do any other road walks?
I think
There was one other small one in the desert for like 10 miles. I remember, and that's when we signed that book in that convenience store, and it had those hikers from like 1976 that signed,
yeah.
and we were like 3 pages after them because nobody goes through this town. So we did do that other small little road walk there.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I think we did overall, like, all the road walks were in the desert portion. That was all. I think that was all the road walks we did, right? I can't remember doing
I
any
feel
other
like
ones.
there's 3, 4 maybe.
Yeah,
That was it. I can't remember them all. I know I have them written down, but
yeah.
should've-
There was no closed portion of the trail that I could even think of after the desert when we were hiking on it.
Well, I remember there was one road walk that was a potential, and that was the Chimney Fire. Do you remember that happening when we were in Tehachapi?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's how you got out ahead. Like I think you and G String and Shotgun went out like one day ahead of myself, because there was rumors that like the trail did close.
That's true. So we actually
But
did.
you didn't do the road walk. You went out ahead hoping to maybe beat it, or maybe if you had to do a road walk. And I remember planning or getting plans and talking about different routes that we might have to take, and it was going to be like a 75-mile road walk possibly because there was a fire.
I remember that.
And then
When we got to the road there where we thought it would be closed, it ended up not being closed, I think.
the Warner Pass was where they were going to close it. or
Yeah,
something
and it
like
ended
that.
up not being closed.
Yeah.
I was not hiking with you at that time, but we'll keep on going. We'll talk about Washington next, but we didn't even introduce how we even met each other.
Oh no, that's true. That's
We can talk about it right now, or because you can just spice it up later, right?
well, we can just let it go and put it up, and
Yeah.
it makes it easier. It's all right.
But you want to talk about Washington? We'll go back to it.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, or we can just talk about how we met. It's all right. We can talk about.
This is you being really difficult right now. No, I'm just fucking with you. It was just funny that we're talking this whole time. We had not even mentioned like how we met. I think along with that question of why did you hike the PCT, the next following question is, did you start alone?
Oh yeah, or did you hike alone?
Did you hike alone? And
Common.
yeah, I'd say almost everybody who's not hiking with a significant other or brother or sister pretty much starts the trail alone.
Yeah.
And that was for me, and I had met the first 2 days I was hiking basically by myself, and then I had met Leah. She hears this, she's like, I could never, because in the German pronunciation, for some reason I can never get it right.
Yeah.
Leah.
I don't know.
Leah. Anyway, hiked with her for like 3 days. And then I remember her saying to me that like, oh, there was this guy up ahead that I think you'd really get along with. And then I remember when I was hiking with her, we ran into you at Scissors Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how I met you. That was at mile 77.
Yeah.
And then I met you at mile 77, and I finished the trail with you.
Yeah.
So I think between the mile 77 and 2660, I think we have not hiked together for maybe a couple hundred miles.
Yeah, a couple hundred.
But I always knew that I was going to be hiking with you, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you started the trail alone, but you meet friends out there pretty quickly. And
Really
if I
cool.
if I had not met you, I'm sure I'd met another person and hiked with them for a long time and hiked with another person. There's so many people out there that you can hike with if you go the typical northbound, starting the desert in April type of thing. You're bound to meet so many people out there that
Hmm.
if you want to hike with somebody, you can. But also the great thing is if you want to hike alone, you can do that too.
Yeah.
I had never felt overcrowded on the trail. Maybe
Yeah.
in the desert there was some portions that were a lot of people around, but even then you could hike alone if you wanted to, you know. Uh yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah, no, I think hiking alone and hiking with a partner are like one thing I think meeting someone out there on the trail to hike with is much different than probably starting a trail with someone. Like if you and I probably went out and did a trail now, it would be I feel like it'd be kind of like old times, but like say if you decided, "Oh, I'm going to hike the trail with like my girlfriend or my boyfriend or my significant other or like my brother or sister," I think those some of those people didn't seem to always I don't know, like
Be on the same page.
yeah, exactly. Because hiking is I don't know, you kind of learn about how you're going to be out there when you're out there, and when you have these preconceived notions going in and hiking with other people. And one thing that always stood out to me too on the PCT was I don't know if you got it a lot, but there was always people who were like, "Hey, I'm going to come out and hike with you for like a day." Or like I'm gonna meet up with you and we'll hike, and it's like
Little
you can't. It's cool, but
always apprehensive to
yeah,
invite somebody to hike with us for a couple days.
yeah,
Uh the great thing about starting the trail alone is that if you do end up hiking with somebody, like I had met Sing Song out on the trail, but uh, if I ever got too sick of his company, I knew that I could just ditch him,
yeah.
and I wouldn't have, that was just the end of that.
Hmm.
You don't have that same thought when you're hiking with a girlfriend or boyfriend. You can't just ditch him unless if you ditch him, that's a breakup. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's funny because like it's always nice to have that thought in your head of like, man, I kind of hate this person right now. So if I wanted to leave, I can.
Yeah.
And if I don't, then I don't have to. It's just you have the freedom to make that
Hmm.
choice when you're hiking with somebody else. You do that's important to you, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, brother, sister. You can't really make that choice. You
Yeah.
know, if you do, it's gonna be fuck up your your relationship.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing, and that would happen too on the trail. There would be times where you're like, I'm gonna just go hike a couple extra miles, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna camp here, and
Yeah, that was
that would
many.
happen,
I
and
remember that actually
yeah,
happening many times. Even if we had overall hiked almost every day together, sometimes there were days that like I felt good and I wanted to hike more that day, and
mhm,
you felt not as good and you wanted to stay back, and then we had pretty much were like, we'll meet up tomorrow at lunch or something like that.
yeah,
But if you're hiking with somebody that you have to share gear with, that's not possible.
no,
And some of those days that you just break and you do that by yourself, have that those couple days by yourself is it's refreshing. It's the same thing in like honestly any normal healthy relationship. You can't really be around somebody 24/7. It's just not.
yeah,
That just is a recipe waiting to happen. A recipe for disaster waiting to happen. I don't know if I said that correctly, but anyway, how many people did that had that had hiked the trail that started off as boyfriend girlfriend and then broke up or something like that? It seemed like there was a lot of
there was a
people.
few of those cases. I remember that happening a few times actually.
Yeah,
Like, I remember hearing a few couples breaking up
yeah.
there. So
Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there of how we met and
yeah,
the hiking alone thing.
yeah, hiking alone
So
versus hiking with a partner versus hiking with a dog. What about that? How do you feel about that? Because sometimes I feel like there's some dogs that can do it, and I still don't feel like even every dog should maybe be out there. Sometimes, like we saw that husky, and that was about the only dog. I was like, oh, this dog can do it. But like any other dog, I was like, yeah, I don't think
I
you
would
can.
say, if you bring your dog on the PCT and expect to be able to through hike, I think that's just a bad idea
Yeah.
for the most part.
Hmm.
Not everybody and not every dog, but for the most part, that's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Unless you want to hike 8 miles a day.
Yeah. There was. I remember.
You
Well,
know what I'm saying?
yeah, and I think part of it too is I think in some of the national parks you can't bring your
You
dogs.
can't bring your dog into
Yeah.
a national park. A lot of times you have to go around that. So you can't even technically through hike. But if you wanted to through hike on all the portions that you could do with an animal, I just think it's just not a very very good idea.
Yeah.
For the most part. most dogs can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a simple fact.
Yeah.
Humans are made to walk long distances. Dogs are not.
Yeah.
That's just not it. That's just not how it is.
Yeah.
Huskies, healers, could probably do it. Other really really energetic dog types could probably do it. But even then, you have to make a lot of sacrifices to be able to hike with your animal.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, I once took my dog out on a hike, and it was just like 6 mile, 8 mile round trip. And like by the time I got back, I went with my dad. By the time we got back, our dog was beat. Like we get back down to the car, and he couldn't even jump in the car.
Yeah,
And he was a dog that was in good health, and he couldn't even get in the car, and he was just worn out. And we left him at the house, and he just laid there for for hours and didn't move. But I think he had a good time, but still, it's just not.
I remember in Washington there was a couple that had brought their dog. They were through hikers, and then they had gotten their dog in the beginning of Washington and was gonna hike all of Washington with their dog.
Was this near Mount Rainier? I think.
I think when we saw them, it was at a road crossing somewhere, and then there was that big like Trail Magic, and then the person like opened up the back of their Subaru, and then like the dog like jumped in like, I want to go home right now.
Yeah.
Like I remember like feeling so bad for the dog because it was like they were about halfway through Washington, and I could tell the dog was like just not having it.
Yeah.
Then like it was like a random person like opened up the back of their car, and the dog jumped in like, I want to go home.
Yeah, it's not even their car.
Yeah,
just
it's
like
not
the
even
dog's-
their car. The dog's like, I just want to go home.
Yep.
This means going home. And
Yep.
I felt so bad for that dog. And I think they were good dog owners. I mean, I didn't have a hike with them too much, but they seemed like generally good people and that actually took care of their dog.
Yeah.
But the dog was just done hiking.
Yeah, definitely.
Not anything to do bad like with them. It's just like most dogs are just not able to through hike. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got. Let's cover up Washington, and then maybe
How long have we been doing this?
we've been doing it for a while. You gonna talk Washington, or you
Yeah.
gonna save that for?
No,
another
we'll
time?
talk.
We'll
We'll
talk
talk.
Washington, and
Yeah.
then maybe call it good for now, and then
Come back to it later.
come back and
if
do
you
another
want,
one later.
yeah.
Okay. So Washington, the weird weather state like that.
Weird Washington, the weird weather state.
The weird, wacky weather state. Yeah, that was one thing I noticed the most about Washington was just at least it's September by that time we got there. I think we had started Washington like the last day of August or somewhere around that, and I just remember every other day or throughout the day it was either raining or cloudy or clear or sunny and nice and not, and it would just switch like all the time. That was one thing that stood out to me the most about Washington. Was
Yeah.
just the weather.
Yeah, the weather was sometimes very nice, beautiful, and sometimes very bad, terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the
Rain,
last.
yeah, especially the last like 2 weeks
Yeah.
of the trail.
Yeah, before around Stehekin. I remember that one day we did a climb, and we got up to the top of the mountain, and it's just like raining sideways,
Yeah.
and then coming down, and there was those twin guys, and I think this was the night that you had trouble getting your stakes in the ground because the ground was so soft,
Yeah.
and there was all the creek and stuff there.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
That day was completely wet, and we called it at like 4. Like we stopped at 4.
Yeah, yeah, in Washington, you're gonna start getting rain if you're hiking through Washington, basically every month. I mean, August generally in Washington is the driest month in Washington,
Mhm.
and is that correct? I mean, you're from Washington,
Yeah, I would
so
say August.
generally August is the
driest.
driest, but even then you could get some pretty bad storms. But pretty much winter starts coming in September.
Yep.
And if you don't get snow on the PCT in September, you're going to get some cold rain. That's just like pretty much a fact. And there was a I remember actually getting really, really, really wet the day before Trout Lake. And because I actually had set up the tent not incorrectly, but I'd always left there's a rain flap in the back of my tent that I always left open because I never rained
Yeah.
usually. But then I left it open, and then when it rained, it poured that night. It poured and got my all the rain splashed went through the tent basically, and then got my sleeping bag like soaking wet. And so if we didn't go into Trout Lake and I had the ability to dry my stuff out, I would have been way worse off. But that actually ended up kind of did happen like later on when we were hiking. It was before Stehekin. We got a rain for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And that I remember that it was that one day. I wish I remembered the name of that river. It's like it's Suattle River.
Maybe.
Suiattle, whatever
like that.
river. And that I remember being very, very wet that day, and I was so cold. I think that was the day that we had ran that whole. Remember running like almost the whole day because if we walked, we were like too cold or whatever. Like, yeah, I just remember when we set up the tent at like 4 o'clock, whatever, in the afternoon because it was still pouring rain.
Yeah. And
I couldn't get the tent stakes in, and a lot of my stuff just got wet, and I was on the brink of like hypothermia because it was just I was so cold and I could not warm up. I thought I was gonna die. Like even though I knew I wasn't, I was pretty worried because I was shivering. I got in my sleeping bag at whatever like 5 o'clock, and I was shivering for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I didn't go to sleep until like past midnight because I was shivering, afraid I was gonna die. I was gonna go cuddle with you, I think, but it ended up not happen. I ended up falling asleep and it was fine, but I was pretty scared that night.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember saying, "Oh, grab your puffy and maybe see if that will help you out." And
again, that's not from being unprepared. That is just something you have to deal with.
It's a mental thing. I feel like more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that, and because of that experience, I really do think having a freestanding tent is a good idea. If any time you're ever going to expect rain, really.
Yeah, that was.
Other people disagree with me, but I just like having the comfort of having a pulled tent,
Yeah.
Because it's just easier to set up and easier to keep your stuff dry.
Yeah. I remember one of the colder nights in Washington. It was probably towards the end. I think it was probably before Hart's Pass or somewhere around there. And it was just freezing. That's where we had the mice problem.
Oh yeah,
There was a mouse that like ran into my into my tent, and like I saw it climb up like one of the poles from the tent.
Yeah, I remember that.
I wanted to punch the mouse, but I was in my sleeping bag.
Well, that was the second to last night on the trail.
Yeah, it was freezing.
Yeah, it was freezing that night, and it was freezing for you, but even colder for me because that was the night that I popped my air mattress.
Oh yeah, I remember that, and you were bragging about like, oh yeah, this is a great great to have one of these air mattresses 42, and then it's just like the next thing is like.
Yeah, the reason why the air mattress popped was because we got into camp really late.
Yeah, it was probably about 8.
I think it was later than that. It doesn't matter. It was past dark, and it was because it was completely pitch black. I remember I was having a really difficult time finding that water, and we had finally found the water and set up our tent and all that stuff. And I got into the tent. I remember journaling, and then went to I was about to go to sleep, and I turned over onto my belly, and when I did that, the air mattress went and just exploded basically, and all the air went out. I was like, what the hell just happened? And I looked, and it was a hole in my air mattress because there was a really, really sharp pointy rock that I did not see when setting up because it was pitch black. And I popped the air mattress because of that.
Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, it definitely did suck. Miraculously, the next day, we had trail magic, and I actually ended up fixing the air mattress. And air mattress lasted me for a lot longer after that, even though it had a quarter of an inch size hole in the mattress. That did suck that night because it was a very cold night.
It was.
I ended up since I didn't have an air mattress any longer, I ended up just putting all my clothes on the ground because at least it was dry.
Yeah.
And I put all the clothes on the ground and slept on top of the clothes, and that was something.
Yeah, I remember doing sit-ups and push-ups that night. Just to stay warm, because I'd wake up, and I think one thing too I didn't do very good on the trail was like get your down feathers in your sleeping bag kind of on the top of your body. I think mine were kind of shifted all over the place.
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to
just shake it out
almost every day.
Yeah, and I don't think I was doing really well on that, and so I remember that night it being pretty cold, and I'm like, what the heck? Because I think I put on my puffy to sleep. I slept in my puffy, and I slept with my like thermals or whatever, and I was still cold, and we were on the
You're
top of the mountain too,
you're
basically.
gonna have cold nights on the
Yeah.
PCT. You're gonna have cold nights almost every night on the PCT. Some nights are gonna be colder than others.
Hmm.
The only time I remember it not being cold at night was a few nights in like Northern California and Oregon. But for the most part, it's going to be cold time at night. That's why it's always good to have a good sleeping bag. I had a 20-degree bag and I loved having it.
Yeah.
I could have even got a little bit colder than that, but I was fine having the 20-degree bag.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that like just leaving California, there were nights where I barely slept with my sleeping bag. Like I just had it as a blanket. I used it as a
Yeah,
blanket and
yeah,
would like
yeah.
crack it open because it was so hot
There
at
was
night.
actually a night there that I didn't even
Yeah.
use the sleeping bag at all.
Hmm.
But yeah, but for the most part, that's completely rare, and you're gonna have very cold nights. Um, I ended up, it's scenery wise though in Washington. I ended up really, really, really enjoying Washington. I thought Washington was some of the most beautiful scenery that I have ever seen in
Yeah.
my entire life, and I've been all over the country. I've been too much outside the country, but I mean, I just really, really enjoyed backcountry Washington, and also the feeling of you're really out in the middle of nowhere
Yes. Yeah.
is a just an interesting feeling. You really do feel immersed in the wilderness when you're out there because you know that if you do end up getting lost, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like and so it kind of brings like a whole nother level of awareness when you're hiking out there. Is that like you should be more careful about taking a shit off the trail, and you better be sure you know which direction the trail is if you
Yeah, no, there was like that happened to me when I was in Oregon. There was a time where I went off the trail to take a dump, and I remember someone gave me that Manzanita stick. I don't know if you remember
Oh, I
that.
remember, yeah.
I had the Manzanita stick, and that thing was awesome. And I wanted to take it all the way to the monument and just leave it there. That's what I wanted to do, so someone could southbound if they
Yeah.
wanted with it. Because yeah, it was that Manzanita stick, and I had that in Oregon, and the trees, all the trees are there's all the trees there, and so I walk off the trail to take a dump, and I only walked about 100 feet off trail, and I start digging a hole, um, do my dump, and then I clean up, and then I start walking back in the direction of the trail, or in the direction I thought my pack was at, and I knew it was just one direction. It's just had that had east or west or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I get back to the trail, and I was like, oh crap, I forgot the Manzanita stick. And I was like, well, let me go find my backpack first. And I was like, where's my backpack? It took me about a good 5 to 10 minutes to realize where my backpack was at. And I left my backpack
On the
side
trail, right?
on the trail,
Yeah.
on the side of the trail. And I'm like, do I go north? So I walk north a little bit. I'm like, no. And so I walk south, and I finally found my backpack.
You were
And
way off the
I was
trail than you
way
thought.
off, all
Yeah.
turned around, and it was
Yeah.
just that was 150 feet, and that was it.
Yeah, I remember in California stepping off the trail to go take a poo, and I don't think so. No. Wait, is it?
It's 12:46.
It's Monday though. Anyway, I don't know why she's not at work. Oh, anyway. I remember in California, I went and stepped off to take a poo and ended up doing the deed. And then when I got up, I realized that I couldn't see the trail and had no idea which direction the trail was because it was in a portion that was really flat and it was forested. And I just stepped off the trail like really close to the trail. But since it was so flat, you're not going uphill. So you're like, if you're going uphill, you know that you go back downhill after you take a poo and you'll hit the trail. But if you're on your flat area, you could go any direction and you don't know which. So dude, I was lost, and I had my backpack with me. So I wasn't extremely worried, but I ended up finding the trail pretty soon after that. But I remember I could have got lost there. And there have been stories of people going off the trail to take a poop and getting lost forever and dying.
Yeah.
That is a real thing that happens.
Yeah, wasn't there a story on the AT about a lady in Maine that got lost, right?
Yeah, and
like a year ago or something like that, a couple years ago.
yeah, And yes, that lady, they ended up finding her body, I think, 1 or 2 years after she was lost. And this lady was not someone that was inexperienced either. She had hiked all of the trail, all of the AT from Georgia all the way up to Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she was a section hiker, but I'm pretty sure she had done pretty much almost the whole AT,
Yeah.
and so was an inexperienced hiker and ended up stepping off the trail to take a poop. Had her bag with her, but ended up getting lost because she didn't have the right technology to find herself back onto the trail. Ended up getting lost and then dying out in the wilderness. And they found her body in her journal, and she said that she stepped off the trail taking a poop. And it's crazy because I think a lot of people can think, I wouldn't get lost. Like I know. There's that age-old trick that if you get lost, if you get completely lost, just find water. And once you find a creek, you can walk down that creek, and then that creek will turn into another creek, and that creek will turn into a river, and you keep on walking down the drainage, and you'll find your way back to civilization eventually.
Yeah.
That is just, I think after hiking a lot now, I used to think like that, but now I actually think that's a stupid idea because sometimes most of the time you can't walk down drainages because it's too crowded with plants. You just can't do it. And so it just becomes an impossible task. And then on top of that, sometimes you go through canyons that are impossible for a human to walk through.
Yeah.
It's just not just,
I started to panic a little bit out there when that happened for me, and it was I knew where all my stuff was, and I was just mildly like starting to panic, like, wait, where's my stuff? Where's the trail?
Oh yeah.
And that was just
my heart skipped a beat when I got lost, quote unquote, but I knew that I was very close to civilization. I probably wouldn't be lost for long if I did get lost.
Yeah, it was for a moment there I was like, oh my god, and I could really see how someone could get lost out there and how dangerous it really can be if you're not, paying attention to your orientation and directions and might not have all the stuff.
If you're going to carry a smartphone on the PCT, which most people do, you really should have an app at least on it, like Half Mile, because if you have Half Mile that's downloaded onto your phone and your phone works, then you won't get lost because Half Mile will tell you which direction to go to be able to meet up with the trail.
Yeah, 200 feet from the
that
trail.
lady that was in Maine, there you could have the same thing. You'd have Guthooks app on on the AT. That lady had a smartphone, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have the technology that was available to her at the time on the smartphone to be able to find the trail back.
Jeez.
So, and Half Mile is a free app. So even if you have Guthooks, if you don't have Half Mile on your phone, that's just a stupid thing, and it could potentially end up saving your life.
Yeah.
So you don't need, a beacon locator when you're hiking, but I don't think it's a bad idea to carry.
You mean the Spot or something?
Like a Spot device or Garmin.
I think I might get a Spot if I go out and do a bigger trail again.
I will say for anybody that ended up wanting to get a beacon locator for themselves, a GPS location device or whatever. I forget exactly what they're called. Mm-hmm. If you guys end up getting a beacon locator, I would suggest not getting a Spot device.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get the Spot. I was going to get something else. I was going to get
the Garmin. I am not sponsored by them or anything. It's just that the Spot device doesn't have any text capability, and you have to pay you have to pay a yearly rate.
Oh, really? I thought you just bought it once and you're good to go.
No, it's an annual subscription, and Garmin has the same thing. However, it's almost the same money for the annual prescription. It might even be cheaper than the Spot device, and you have text capabilities. If you get lost, but not lost like let me hit this button so some people can rescue me, but if you need some direction or something like that, or just to let your family to know that you're safe and okay, and it might be a couple more days until you hear from me, you have text capabilities. That's not possible on the Spot device, but it's possible on the Garmin. Garmin's a little bit heavier, but I think it's better because it has an actual screen on it.
Heavier as in just a couple of ounces probably too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is weird, thinking about, it is heavier, but that does add up too. So
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I guess for now you want to just wrap it up, and then maybe we can do another one, another time.
Yeah.
call it good. So thanks for listening. If you guys have any questions or anything that you would want to add, any insight or anything, please just leave a comment below or leave a comment somewhere around there, and maybe we can talk about that on the next episode. Anyways, that's me, Sing Song. Thank you for listening. I'll pass it over to Flash if you want to say any last
And
words.
this is Flash signing off.
All right.